Look at this road. For miles in every direction, there is no shelter, no buildings, no civilization. Just the deep forests of Hokkaido, Japan, the densest and most lethal hunting ground for the Ussuri brown bear on the planet. This is exactly where two parents, trying to discipline their 7-year-old son, forced him out of their car. They drove 500 meters up the road. They waited. And then, feeling guilty, they turned the car around. Time elapsed. Exactly 5 minutes. 300 seconds. But when they returned to this exact spot, Yamato was gone. What followed was one of the most massive, desperate, and baffling manhunts in Japanese history. Thousands of searchers and military dogs sweeping a freezing forest for a terrified little boy. But the truth of what happened to Yamato Tanooka, and where he actually was while the entire country was looking for him, defies every law of logic, survival, and physical reality. To understand how a child vanishes into thin air in 300 seconds, we have to rewind to the moment the nightmare began. Hokkaido, Japan's northernmost main island. May 28, 2016. The Tanooka family had driven out to the forests near Nanai that Saturday morning for a simple, ordinary outing. The kind Japanese families take when spring finally loosens its grip on the north and the hills turn green. Yamato was 7 years old, a first grader at Hamawake Elementary School, the kind of boy whose school photos show a wide, proud smile and bangs falling over bright eyes. He liked baseball. He liked being outside. He had an entire life mapped out in front of him in the effortless way only children possess. Sports days, summers, the next grade, the one after that. The plan that Saturday was simple. Drive into the hills, collect wild vegetables, the kind that push through the cold Hokkaido soil in late spring, and drive home before evening. His mother, his father, Takayuki, his younger sister. A family car moving through mountain roads, lined with birch and pine, the windows cracked, the sky a clean, pale blue above the tree line. Hokkaido in late May is a specific kind of beautiful. Not the manicured beauty of Japan's southern islands, with their carefully tended shrines and perfectly shaped cherry trees. This is something older, rougher, wilder. The forests here are dense enough to swallow sound. The hills rise steeply, thick with stands of Yezo spruce and Sakhalin fir that have never been trimmed, never been shaped, that have been growing and falling and growing again for centuries without a human hand intervening. The light that filters through them is green and diffuse, the kind of light that makes distances hard to judge. And in those forests, in those hills, live Ussuri brown bears, the same subspecies as the North American grizzly, capable of growing past, 6 feet tall and weighing over 650 pounds. Since 1962, when the Hokkaido government began keeping records, there have been dozens of bear attacks on the island. Dozens of deaths. But that Saturday morning, with the sky clear and the forest green and the family together in the car, none of that felt relevant. Somewhere along the drive home, Yamato misbehaved. Earlier that afternoon, at a river, he had been throwing stones at passing cars, at people. The kind of reckless, impulsive behavior that frightens parents precisely because it is so easy for a child to do, and so easy for it to go terribly wrong. Takayuki Tanooka made a decision. He pulled the car over on a mountain road surrounded by dense forest. He told Yamato to get out. The plan, if it can be called that, was to frighten him, To let the weight of the forest, the silence of the road, the aloneness of standing on a mountain without the car, do the work that words hadn't. Leave him there for a minute, maybe 5. Drive 500 meters up the road, wait, come back. A lesson. Sharp, brief, forgotten by dinner. Takayuki drove 500 meters. He waited. He turned the car around. He drove back. 5 minutes, maybe less. Yamato was gone. The road was straight. The forest on either side was impenetrable. Dense, dark, the undergrowth thick enough that a child pushing through it would leave visible signs, broken branches, disturbed leaves, tracks in the soft Hokkaido soil. Takayuki called out. He walked the verge. He called out again. Nothing. Not a sound. Not a rustle. Not a voice calling back. Just the wind in the fir trees. Just the ordinary noise of a spring afternoon in the hills. Just the absence where a boy had been standing 300 seconds before. The family drove back through the forest, searching. They searched the road in both directions. They drove the route again and again. And then, at around 6 p.m., they called the police. But when they called, and this detail would matter, they did not tell the truth. They told the operator that Yamato had gone missing while the family was collecting wild vegetables, that he had simply wandered off, that they didn't know how. The truth, that he had been left by the side of the road as punishment, was a confession the father couldn't bring himself to make while also asking for help. It was a lie that would cost the search 6 hours of daylight, and perhaps much more than that. By Sunday morning, more than 100 rescue workers were on the ground in the forest near Nanai. By Monday, that number had climbed to 150. Police officers, firefighters, civilian volunteers, soldiers from Japan's self-defense forces. Sniffer dogs moved through the undergrowth, sweeping methodically, their handlers watching their body language for the shift, the lifted head, the quickened pace, the pull toward a scent that would mean Yamato was near. The dogs found nothing, not a trace, not a footprint in the soft soil at the forest edge, not a scrap of clothing on a branch. It was as though the boy had stepped off the road and been absorbed by the air itself. Now, before we go further, understand what this means. Sniffer dogs don't lose a trail because a person walked carefully. They don't lose a trail because it rained, or because time has passed, or because the terrain is difficult. These animals can detect a human scent through soil, through water, through 4 feet of snow. Their olfactory capacity is estimated at 10,000 to 100,000 times greater than ours. A child who ran into those woods at 4 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon should have left a scent trail so strong, so recent, that the dogs would have pulled their handlers off their feet to follow it. Instead, nothing. By Wednesday, 4 days in, a rescue team spokesman told reporters, simply and quietly, "We still have no clue. We just do not know where he went." Let that land for a moment. 4 days. Hundreds of trained searchers. Dogs with noses that can find a body under a collapsed building. And the official statement was, "We have no clue." The temperatures had dropped to 46 degrees Fahrenheit on the first night, cold enough to be dangerous for a child without warm clothing. Yamato had been wearing a light jacket, no extra layers, no food, no water. The forest around the search area was bare territory. Not theoretically, not as a general regional concern, but specifically and documentably. Search teams wore bear bells on their belts, Bells designed to make enough noise that a 650-pound animal hears you coming and, if you are fortunate, chooses to move away. A 7-year-old child, alone, in the dark, in the cold, had none of those bells. And yet the dogs found nothing. The searchers found nothing. And here's the detail that no one in the news coverage lingered on, because the story had a happy ending, and happy endings make people stop asking questions. Among the areas swept and cleared in those first days of searching was the Komagatake military exercise ground in the town of Shikabe, approximately 6 kilometers from where Yamato had last been seen. Swept, cleared, empty. On the morning of June 3rd, a soldier arrived at the Komagatake exercise ground for what should have been a routine start to his day. He was not part of the search effort. He was not looking for anyone. He walked to one of the longhouse-style training huts on the grounds, unlocked the door, and found Yamato Tanooka lying between 2 mattresses on the floor. The boy was alive, dehydrated, mildly malnourished, with minor scratches on his arms and feet, but alive, and according to the military officials who were called immediately, Genki, full of energy, not broken, not traumatized into silence. The soldier gave him 2 rice balls. Yamato ate them ravenously. When they asked him his name, he told them clearly and without hesitation. Yamato Tanooka. He was airlifted to Hakodate Municipal Hospital, where Dr. Yoshiyuki Sakai examined him and told Japanese national television that the boy appeared to be in remarkable condition for someone who had gone 7 days without food. He spoke coherently. He was oriented. He showed no signs of serious physical harm beyond what 6 days alone in the cold would be expected to produce. After treatment for dehydration and a brief period of monitoring, Yamato Tanooka walked out of Hakodate City Hospital a few days later, carrying a large card shaped like a baseball covered in messages from well-wishers. He told reporters, "I am okay." He said he was looking forward to sports day. Japan exhaled. The story became a story of resilience and resourcefulness. A 7-year-old who had survived the impossible by keeping calm, finding shelter, drinking water from the faucet outside the hut. The father appeared at a press conference, bowing deeply, his voice cracking. "I never thought the situation would develop in such a way. I thought it would be good for him, but it was too much." A national conversation erupted about parenting and discipline and the rights of children. The story was filed under "Miracle. Crisis over. Move on." But the questions didn't move on, because a miracle, by definition, is something that cannot be explained. And when you sit with the specific, documented facts of this case, not the headlines, not the press conferences, but the actual verified facts, the miracle starts to look less like grace and more like a gap in our understanding of what happened in those 6 days. Yamato was last seen at approximately 4 p.m. on May 28th on a mountain road near Nanai. His father drove 500 meters, returned, gone. The road at that point runs through dense forest. There are no side roads, no buildings, no structures within immediate reach. A 7-year-old child, panicking or curious or frightened, would most logically have done one of 3 things: stayed on the road, moved along the road in one direction, or pushed into the trees. All 3 scenarios leave evidence. A child on the road is visible. A child walking a road leaves footprints, disturbs gravel, is seen by any passing car. a child pushing through dense Hokkaido undergrowth leaves broken branches, crushed vegetation, tracks in the soft, late spring soil. The dogs would have had that trail within minutes of arriving. None of those things happened. Or rather, none of those things were found. And the distinction between those two statements is the entire mystery. Now consider the destination. The Komagatake exercise ground in Shikabe is 6 kilometers from the point of disappearance. Military officials noted, when Yamato was found, that the building where he'd been sheltering was far from where he had disappeared and involved a rigorous uphill climb. Rigorous. Uphill. 6 kilometers through dense, untrailed Hokkaido forest, across terrain that adult searchers with maps and equipment had been struggling to cover for days. Yamato covered it in darkness, alone, without warm clothing, without food, on the first night. Because he told police that he had reached the hut that first night. The first night. Which means a 7-year-old in the dark, in temperatures dropping toward 46 degrees, in bear country, navigated 6 kilometers of steep forested terrain he had never seen before, and arrived at a specific building, in a specific military compound, and went inside. And stayed there for 6 days, drinking water from an outdoor faucet, sleeping between mattresses for warmth, not leaving. While 180 people searched a widening radius around the place, he had vanished. While helicopters swept the canopy, while dogs worked every trail and access road. Military officials said the hut's door had been left unlocked, open, accessible, which tells us how he got in. But it does not tell us why 180 trained searchers sweeping the Komagatake grounds in the days before he was found did not find a 7-year-old boy who was, by his own account, inside the entire time. There are explanations. There are always explanations. The most common one offered by analysts covering the case was that the initial search of the military grounds had been cursory, a quick visual sweep of the exterior, perhaps, without anyone systematically opening every door of every hut in the compound. It's possible. It's a reasonable administrative failure in a large, chaotic search operation. Searches miss things. It happens. But if that's the explanation, it raises a harder question. Why didn't Yamato make a sound? 6 days. Hundreds of voices calling his name in the forest. Search teams on the grounds of the very compound where he was hiding. A 7-year-old boy, alone, cold, without food, who did not call back, who did not bang on walls, who did not open the door and walk toward the voices. When police questioned him at the hospital, they asked him about this. Why hadn't he called for help? Why hadn't he come out? Yamato's answers, as relayed through the Hokkaido police to the Japanese news agency Kyodo, were described as consistent with his parents' version of events, which tells us almost nothing. Consistent with the fact of being left, consistent with walking to the hut. But the specific question, why he stayed silent while people searched, was not answered in any report. Or if it was answered, the answer was not shared. A former governor, appearing on TV Asahi after the rescue, offered this. Perhaps he imagined he was on some adventure and was hiding in a secret camp. He wondered aloud how the boy had endured the loneliness, especially at night. It's a generous reading. Children do strange things when they are frightened. They hide instead of calling out. They wait. They go quiet. There is a psychological literature on children who go silent in survival situations, who retreat into themselves, who dissociate from the danger, who find a logic internal to their own fear that an adult would not recognize as logic at all. Maybe that is what happened. Maybe a 7-year-old, frightened and ashamed and cold, decided that the hut was his world now, and that the voices outside were part of a world he was no longer sure was safe. Maybe his father driving away had done something to his understanding of where safety lived, and out there, even with the voices, felt less certain than the floor between two mattresses. Maybe. But there are still the dogs. 180 searchers found no trace. But 180 searchers can miss a hut, can fail to open a door, can walk past a building without thinking to check inside. Human searchers miss things. That's documented, and that's forgivable. But the dogs were working the grounds too. And dogs don't miss a living child 6 meters away. Not if that child has been in a confined space for 2, 3, 4, 5 days. A hut with no ventilation, where a small body has been breathing and sweating and sleeping for nearly a week, should have been a beacon to every working dog within a kilometer of the fence line. The scent would have been immense, unmistakable, unavoidable. And yet the comprehensive account of the search, as reported across dozens of news outlets, is this: a massive manhunt, including 180 people and search dogs, had found no trace of him. No trace. Not reduced trace. Not partial trace. No trace. So let's lay out what we know, not what we suspect, not what we can theorize, but what is documented and confirmed. 1. Yamato Tanooka disappeared from a roadside in Nanae at approximately 4 p.m. on May 28th, in 2016. His father was 500 meters away. He was gone within 5 minutes. 2. A search involving over 180 personnel, sniffer dogs, and aerial resources found no trace of the boy for 6 days. The search teams described the situation in terms that have almost never been used in modern search and rescue operations. No clue. None. 3. Yamato was found in a military training hut approximately 6 kilometers from his disappearance point, a distance that required uphill navigation through dense forest terrain in darkness on the first night of his disappearance. He reportedly reached the hut that first night and remained there for the duration. 4. The hut was in an area that had been included in the search sweep. It was confirmed empty before Yamato was found inside it. 5. The dogs found nothing. No scent trail leading to the hut. No confirmation of life inside the compound during the search. Nothing. Now, the explanations. The rational framework works like this. A frightened child in a state of acute stress may have moved with unusual speed and determination. Adrenaline does remarkable things to the human body, and children can cover terrain quickly when they are driven by fear. 6 kilometers of uphill forest at night is not physically impossible for a 7-year-old. Difficult, yes, but not impossible. Children in survival situations have done things that defy what we would consider their physical parameters. The failure of the search dogs might be explained by a specific and documented phenomenon called scent pools. In certain atmospheric and terrain conditions, cold air settling in valleys can trap scent in unexpected ways, drawing it away from its source, leading dogs in the wrong direction. Hokkaido's hilly terrain, in the cold air of a late May evening, could theoretically produce those conditions. And the failure to find him in the hut might simply be human error compounded by the scale and chaos of a large search operation. These explanations are possible. Some of them are probable, but they require several unlikely events to have occurred simultaneously and in precise coordination. A child navigating 6 kilometers of steep, dark, unfamiliar terrain without a single injury beyond minor scratches. Dogs failing to detect a confined scent source that should have been overwhelming. Search teams overlooking a building in an area they had cleared. And a boy remaining completely silent for 6 days while rescue workers called his name from outside. The rational framework holds, just barely, held together with the quiet assumption that because the story ended well, the inexplicable parts must have explanations we simply haven't been given. But here's the question that doesn't go away. What if the story of where Yamato was during those 6 days is not fully the story of where Yamato was during those 6 days? His own account, a 7-year-old's account, given to police after 6 days alone in the cold, while dehydrated from inside a hospital, was that he walked to the hut on the first night and stayed. Police said his story was consistent with his parents' account, not corroborated, not verified by physical evidence. Consistent, in the sense that it did not contradict what little the parents knew. There is a version of this that requires no paranormal explanation, no leap of faith, no departure from documented fact. A child, frightened and resourceful, found shelter and hid. A search hampered by a delayed and initially dishonest report, and by the specific atmospheric conditions of late May in the Hokkaido hills, failed to find him through a convergence of bad luck and the normal fallibility of large operations. He was found by someone who wasn't looking. That is the version that was reported. That is the version his father told. That is the version Yamato told. And yet, there are researchers, serious ones, who study the documented patterns of wilderness disappearances, who have noted that in a significant number of cases involving children who vanish in remote areas, the child is found, when found at all, in a location that was already searched. Not a location adjacent to the searched area. Not a location the searchers missed because they ran out of time. The exact same location. Previously confirmed, empty. Confirmed, empty. And then, later, not empty. The pattern appears in cases across Japan, North America, Northern Europe. Always different circumstances. Always the same impossible geography. Nobody has explained it. Most researchers file it under human error, under the imperfections of large search operations, and move on. But a few, a quiet few, sit with the data and ask a harder question. What if the location wasn't wrong? What if the location was right and something else was different? We don't know what happened in those 6 days. We know the beginning. A boy, a road, a car driving away, a father returning to find nothing. We know the end. A soldier, a hut, a door unlocked, a boy between 2 mattresses. What lies between those 2 points, the actual hours and decisions and movements of a 7-year-old alone in the Hokkaido wilderness, remains, in every meaningful sense, unknown. Yamato's own account is the only testimony, and it is the account of a child, shaken and cold, given to police in a hospital bed after an experience no adult could fully reconstruct. What we know for certain is simpler and stranger than any theory. 180 people with dogs could not find him. One person who wasn't looking did. Today, Yamato Tanooka is a teenager. He left Hakodate City Hospital carrying a baseball-shaped card filled with messages from strangers who had followed his story and willed him home. He said he was okay. He said he was looking forward to sports day. Whatever he carries from those 6 days, whatever images or sounds or silences he has never described to anyone, he has kept to himself with the same quietness he maintained in that hut. The forest near Nanai is still there. The mountain road where Takayuki Tanooka stopped the car and told his son to get out still runs between the same birch trees, under the same pale Hokkaido sky. Families still drive it on spring mornings to gather wild vegetables. None of them stop there. None of them think about it. Why would they? The story ended well. The boy came home. The questions don't need answering when the boy came home. And the Komagatake exercise grounds are still there too. The longhouse huts, the outdoor faucet, the mattresses on the floor, the door that was unlocked, or the door that the boy found unlocked, depending on which version of the story you are inside. Yamato survived against a predator ecosystem that has killed dozens of adults, against cold that should have incapacitated him, against 6 days without food, against a search that found no evidence he was anywhere at all. He survived, and he came home. And the mystery closed because miracles are allowed to be inexplicable. But somewhere in the Komagatake Hills, in the space between the last confirmed empty and the first unlocked door, there is a 6-day gap that belongs to Yamato alone. A 7-year-old boy, and whatever found him before the soldier did, whatever kept him safe, whatever kept him silent, whatever let him go. The forest doesn't explain. It doesn't confess. It gives back what it chooses to give back, and everything else it keeps. Yamato survived the apex predators of Hokkaido by appearing, impossibly, in a sealed military structure that had already been confirmed empty. A boy who should not have been there. A room that should have been searched. A silence that 6 days of voices could not break. But what happens when a child doesn't come back? What happens when the forest keeps what it takes? And the only evidence left behind is a pair of small boots sitting at the edge of the trees, perfectly placed, as if removed with care before a child walked barefoot into something the rest of us can't see. That case is coming, and it will change the way you hear silence in the woods,